Okay, welcome everybody to our webinar today, Digital Marketing, the Brave New World of Content Creation, to connect to customers in a saturated media environment, sorry. My name is Laurie Mosher and I'm a certified specialist in Poison Center. I've been at the Atlantic Canada Poison Center for 21 years now. Poison centers are a source of highly reliable health information. However, we face a number of challenges when it comes to sharing our expert guidance and successfully reaching our target audience. Today, we have Mike McCormick from the Florida Information Center to share his insights and experience on how organizations can be made informed and strategic choices when sharing important health information. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Micmac land, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. This territory is covered by treaties of peace and friendship, which Mi'kmaq and Wolastoq people first signed with the British Crown in 1725. The treaties did not deal with the surrender of lands and resources, but in fact, recognize the Mi'kmaq and the Wolastoq title and establish rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. Just a few housekeeping things. This event will be recorded and the link to the recording will be available after the webinar. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature to submit your questions and we will address them at the end of the webinar. If you prefer to ask your question verbally, you can raise your hand during the Q&A period and someone will unmute you. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, please let us know in the chat box. I would now like to introduce our guest speaker, Mike McCormick. Mike has more than 3 decades in news, information, entertainment, digital, social, sports, and weather content creation. After beginning his career as a videographer, he served as a reporter, producer, and news manager in more than a dozen operations. Mike was a news director for nearly 2 decades, leading 6 different award-winning news operations. Mike also spent 5 years in the corporate role as a group news director, leading the marketing, digital, and social content of creation and news, weather, and sports program and more than a dozen stations. Along his career journey, Mike has also produced NFL, Major League Baseball, college, and high school sports programming. Mike has been honored by many top journalism organizations with awards to Newsroom Excellence, Investigative Reporting, and Documentary Production. His awards include the National and Regional Edward R. Murrow Awards, Emmy Awards in multiple regions, Associated Press Awards, and prestigious Telly. Mike joined the Poison Center world last year. He is lucky to have a beautiful wife, 3 adult children, and too many pets to talk about. He's an avid Liverpool football, soccer fan. So encourage attendees to answer their question in the Q&A. I just encourage you in the Q&A period. And if you would like to ask any questions verbally, then just raise your hand. So welcome, Mike.
Oh, thank you, Laurie. With that introduction, I feel like I almost shouldn't say anything at this point because it could only go downhill from there. And thank you, Richard, for inviting me. Richard saw this presentation earlier this year and invited me to come up. So if you guys don't like it, please blame Richard, not me. Anyway, I'm really passionate about this topic, extremely passionate, because I came from the traditional journalism world. And when I moved into the poison control, poison information world, I was shocked at how little I knew about it. And I said, why are you guys keeping this stuff secret? And people looked at me and said, no, we're trying to get our information out there. I said, but you're not. It's not getting out. So that's what I want to talk about today. But it's easier to just show in a picture what's wrong. I mean, take a look at the screen here. What's wrong? The answer isn't actually what I said. I had to say, take a look at the screen. Nobody in that picture is looking at the television. Nobody. Disclosure wise, as they said, I worked in TV for a lot of years. I still own stock in a TV company, and these views that I'm talking about today are mine. not those necessarily of our poison center here in Florida. Learning objectives, I want to talk about content creation for impactful health messaging. I kind of want to define the basics of setting up a comprehensive digital marketing plan and editorial calendar, and talk about target marketing, digital platforms, and guerrilla marketing techniques. Those are a lot of words. I'm kind of a simple guy, so I like to break it down and make the goals much easier. So what I want to talk about first today is the media landscape. And I'm going to talk about it in the United States, but there's a lot of parallels with Canadian media, and a couple of the people that I have joining me worked and consulted Canadian television stations. I want to talk about the role of content creators and who the content creators are today. Talk about how to build a content calendar. One of the favorite things I love to talk about, go big or go home. I'm going to talk about how you make your messaging have an emotional connection, not just a factual connection, but an emotional connection, and why that's so important. And then talk about how specifically to target that messaging.
Mr. Yuck is mean. Mr. Yuck is green.
So that's a TV public service announcement from the 70s. And it's actually one of the first brands that I remember as a child. So it's kind of ironic that I ended up working in the poison control world. This was actually produced originally by the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania Poison Center, and they hold the copyright on Mr. Yuck. And then when I was a kid, everybody got these stickers and put them on stuff around the house that you were supposed to stay away from. And back then, media was really simple. If you needed to get a message out, all you needed was money. And you could put that money into television advertising, newspaper advertising, or radio advertising. And just those three right there, you could meet the masses. All it took was a little bit of money and you could get there. Well, that world has changed. And in case you don't believe me today, I've brought some friends along. I worked with all these folks at time. I consider them friends, but they're also very learned colleagues who work in all facets of consulting, TV news, and creative services and marketing and digital marketing. So I'm going to have them talk a little bit as I go through the presentation to help try to make some sense of what we're facing. You know, we're talking about the digital disruption of traditional media. And so I want to start by, kind of explaining business disruption in the simplest terms. This was a main mode of transportation 10 years ago. And, this is the way people get around today. And it's not just as simple as Uber created an app to get people to change what they were doing. It's really an entire change in mindset and understanding of everything that was wrong with taxis. Everything from the ability to track where your driver is, to read reviews, to get pricing up front. These were all the changes that went into it. So if I had
show me the money.
Yeah, if I had all the answers, that's what you would do. That great scene from Jerry Maguire. You'd have to show me the money. I wouldn't be giving them away for free. So I don't have all of them, but I've got some today. So let me get through to talking about those. So that's the model I showed you earlier of what TV or what media used to look like. And that's media today. Let's take a look at that picture for just a second. Two huge problems here, both on the content and the receiver end. So on the creator end, one of the problems is, how do you get content to be able to be replicated in all these different platforms? And on the receiver end, when you have all this information coming at you, how do you know what to believe, what to listen to, what do you tune in, and what do you tune out? Well, this really shows the disruption that's going on, at least in the US media. This is newspaper advertising. And you can see 1999 hit a high of about $65 billion. And then as we hit as early as 2012, it was down to $17 billion. And again, that's from 1999, 2000 into 2012, 12 years, they lost over $40 billion. That's about $47 billion in advertising. And by the way, the story gets worse as you continue that chart out. You'll see the dollars continue to drop. And what has ended up happening is media consolidation. Used to, we had a lot of little mom and pops that owned things. I know in Canada, I looked up, said you have 130 television stations. The US, it's over 900, and they were owned by lots of different people. Well, in the US, as those started getting bought up, we were down to only about 20 folks owning all the television operations. Well, when they bought them and spent all the money to buy them, one of the things they started doing was going through and cutting people. They had to make them more profitable, and the easiest line to cut was to cut people. Then all of a sudden, all these digital sources popped up and started challenging them for revenue, which actually led to more layoffs. As we started getting all these new sources, viewers, users started going different places to find stuff. When I took my oldest to college, what was that, 6 years ago, I surprised her and I brought her a television. And she looked at me and she said, "Dad, what do I need that for?" I could not believe that she didn't think she needed a television. And I told her, because my TV career is paid for you to go to college, that's why you need it, and you will watch this. All right, anyway. Brain drain. So as we started having these layoffs, we lost really experienced journalists. And what we are seeing is a trend of younger and younger people coming in who just don't have life experience. They don't know complicated things like we have in our health messaging and our poison information that we're putting out there. And then on top of it, there's new technology constantly being created to put the information out there, which really just makes this overwhelming. And so you could say we face a huge challenge. But if you picked up anything on me, I'm not a negative guy like that. I'm a positive guy. I don't see it as a challenge. I see this as a great opportunity. If we understand what's wrong and the best ways to get messaging out there, we can correct those and we can help feed that funnel. My friend Jacques Knotts was a consultant for years. He's been a general manager of a major cable system and was a news director in many television stations in the United States.
Everybody's media. Every single human being on the face of the earth can have their own media brand at the snap of a finger.
I want you to listen to that. Everybody is media. You know, when I grew up, I looked to the reporters from the newspaper or the radio or the TV, and I thought these were really big, smart people, and you listened, you believed and trusted them. But today, an 8-year-old with an iPhone has a brand of his own that can compete with the CBC. Everybody is media. And so everybody, that includes us. And I think a lot of times in our health information, we see ourselves as experts, the people that media come to interview. We don't see ourselves as the one to be those content creators. But the reality is content is king. So if you look at all these sources out there, the ones with the best content are the ones that most people gravitate to. And folks, I'll tell you, we've got great content. We have great safety information. We have great life-saving information. And there are new threats that are popping up daily that just continue to give us reasons to be out there to talk to people. You know what? And so I just took a gander around the internet at just some poison centers to see what kind of content there were. Illinois, the one in Chicago, they do these great blogs that are so much fun. The Minnesota Poison Center, I love their Twitter feed. They have these great little polls they put out that ask trivia that you can play off of. And then my friends in Missouri, I love what they do. They have a game that you can actually play on their website. And all these are great, but the problem is it would require people to know that they have to go to just their specific platforms to get them. It's not widespread enough. But what we can learn from this is we have powerful content. And, you know, if you go all the way back to the 1500s, you know, Martin Luther wrote out something and nailed it on the door of the church. And with that, he changed religion. So you look at this quote, if you want to change the world, pick up the pen and write. Well, we're starting to do that. But what they learned by the end of that century was when Gutenberg invented the printing press, they could amplify that message. Up to 200 million volumes got produced. And then the great news is by the end of 2025, we will create 181 zettabytes of information in a single year. Now look all the way back to 2010, 2 zettabytes all the way up to 181 zettabytes. Hold on, what's that? You don't know what a zettabyte is? Well, a zettabyte is a unit of measure equal to 1 billion terabytes. So I want you to think about that. We're going to create 181 of these zettabytes of content and information in a year. So there's a simple question to ask. How do you stand out? How do you cut through the clutter? How do you cut through that noise? You know, there's not agreement on how many messages, brands, content that you see in a day. 10,000 plus seems to be the number. How are we going to be the one that somebody's actually going to focus on? Because at the end of the day, you can't go back and list off 10,000 messages that you saw. You'd be lucky if you remember 3 or 4. Erin Martin's a dear friend of mine, and she is a digital content marketer. She worked in television and what they call creative services. She designed the promos or the commercials for the television station. She is just an outstanding marketer.
You have to make a complete content plan. But to start that, like to even start before everything, you have to do that plan.
So, what Erin is really talking about is the way that you answer my question of how are you going to cut through that clutter? It actually starts with a really defined plan. And, to be a plan, I will say this, it's got to be written down. It's not enough just to say, all right, our plan this year, we're going to do some Facebook posts. We'll put out some press releases. We'll be here to answer if the media calls with stuff. No, it's about being on offense. It's about going out there and having a detailed guide that you are going to follow as you go through the year. And I think one of the important things is to write out your brand attributes. And, a lot of times people don't really understand brand attributes. And they didn't in my center when I first got here. They're like, this logo, that's our brand. And I'm like, no, that's our logo. And they're like, oh, well, then the phone number's our brand. And I'm like, no. Again, that's something that people may need, but that's not our brand. Our brand is safety. And that's what we've got to make sure that we're going back to as we're building out this plan, is that we are selling that attribute as we go out there. And I think you do it through what I call the 3 Ds. This is what I used to teach when I was in my consultant role going out. And it's distinctive, disruptive, and disciplined. So let me start with distinctive here, because I think this is one of the big things that we have to work through. And we don't like to think this because we love all our other healthcare organizations that we're working with, but they all have health messages also. So what are we doing to be distinctive in our messaging to make sure that people are hearing it? Well, Greg Durkowski has a company, getgreg.live. He teaches marketers all across the US and some in Canada and some in other places in the world how to be distinctive in their marketing.
And you have to be able to deliver a message that's going to cut through and motivate, and this is the key, motivate them to stop scrolling. Stop, read. The abstract has to catch their attention. The headline has to catch their attention. The image has to catch their attention to get them to engage.
Yeah, if you notice, I call this creating thumb-stopping content. And I want you to think about it. I watch my wife at night. She just sits there on the phone as I'm watching television, and she's got the phone in front of her, and that thumb is just moving. And you know what? All that stuff that's going by, that's not making a difference. So it goes back to what Greg says. We have to motivate people to stop. We got to motivate them to put that thumb on it and click and open it up when we are creating content. And to do that, you've got to create an emotional connection. And I think this is one of the toughest things for us to really focus on as we talk about this, because coming from a healthcare background, we focus so much in facts. I deal with doctors that are non-emotional because that's the key to doing their jobs, to staying calm, but that's not what works well in marketing. What most people, and this isn't just in our industry, it's in all industries, like to do is they like to sell the features. The telephone number that's over my shoulder, that's a feature. It's a feature of who we offer as a poison information center. Features are not what get people in the tent. Features talk to our head. Benefits, that's what speaks to our heart. It's not enough to say that we have this 1-800 number that people can call when there is poison. It's selling that we're the safety net when their kid gets into something, that we're going to be the ones that are there to calm them, the ones that will be there to help them, the one that will keep their child alive and well. And that's the key, is to sell the benefit, not the feature. We form attachments to a product we like, even love, by means of our emotional connection to it. If there's no emotional connection, there's no allegiance or loyalty to that product. We can't be just another health message that's out there where people won't engage with us. I always say with milk, you typically don't have a brand of milk. You pick whatever's up at the supermarket or the convenience store that you stop at. But if I say Starbucks, that's a definitive brand that people know what is, that they'll stop and get something. It's not just coffee, it's Starbucks. That's what we have to do, is become that distinctive in our branding so that people will know us. And then we've got to be disruptive. we've got to figure out how to cut through this clutter to reach people. And then the problem with that is it raises a question, how many people do we need to reach? Well, there's actually a simple formula for that. The formula uses two metrics. One is called reach. That's the number of people a message connects with. And then the frequency is the number of times that message gets in front of those people. So they have a formula called 770. Now, this is an old formula. I was on the beginning of doing some research, and it really looks like the new formula might be 10-100. But anyway, 7 would be the frequency or the amount of time somebody has to hear something before they may remember it. And 70 would be the percent of the total audience that we're trying to reach that we want to get in front of. And I know you'd say, well, we want to be in front of 100%, but that's just not realistic. You can't do that. So if you can get 770, which when we multiplied that together, what we came up with an answer of 490, which we rounded to 500, what we called gross rating points in television. So whatever a rating point was equal to, if that's 10,000 people, then we had to get that message out there 500,000 times for it to begin to make a difference. And this is why your Poison Center's Facebook account or your Poison Center's Twitter is not enough to reach, because it will take you forever to get to a number of that size. Marv Danielski is one of the most brilliant marketing minds I've ever met. He worked for Frank and Maggot Associates, who's one of the best marketing consultants in the world. He's been head of marketing for Hearst, Gannett, and now at Sinclair.
With my message, I reach a great deal of people, but then I make sure that there's frequency behind the message to keep reminding them of what is important or what they can get from my brand of information, my brand of service.
And that's the key. That it's not enough that you just get it out there one time. So one TV hit, if they come and do one news story on you, is not enough. People will see it. It goes in one ear and out the other, and they're gone. They've got to hear it over and over. And here's the key to me. You've got to be bold. And this is something that I've fought since I got in here is, we're the Poison Center. We don't want to alarm people. And I'm like, well, I disagree. We do want to alarm people. More than 100,000 people died of opioid overdoses in the United States last year. That's alarming. We need to get it out there. I'm sorry, one child getting into disinfectant under the sink and getting seriously harmed, that's alarming to me. We have to be bold. We're competing with messages from everything from selling tires to selling gasoline that's out there in the world. We've got to be bold to cut through. So here's Greg again.
This is important information to you. This is relevant to your life, the safety of your family, your children, your grown-ups, anybody, a pet in the house. Be bold with it. Make that message cut through. Otherwise, it's the thumb on the phone just scrolling right on by. Your message is never going to be received. Unfortunately, that's just the way it works. It's human behavior. It has to stop. It has to make them stop.
Think about it with your own social media accounts. You've got that boring friend that no matter what they post, you always just blow by them. I know you do. Hopefully you're not that friend. But anyway, you want to be that one friend you have that no matter what they do, it's exciting that you always stop to look at. That's what we have to do in our messaging. We've got to be that one that people know they want to stop and see. And then we got to amplify it. It's not just enough to be on one platform, or I like to call it one screen. We need to figure out how to spread this message across as many screens as possible. And by platforms or screens, I'm talking about your phone screen, your tablet screen, your computer screen, your television screen. You've got to get out there and move it round and round. Here's Aaron again.
I mean, traditional media, especially nowadays, they've cut back on everything. You have producers who are doing the job of 10 people. You have news directors who are doing the job of 20 people. You have the reporters who have to turn in so many stories a day, but they're also acting as their own photographer. So if you can basically hand deliver them content and make it engaging, so have some sort of a story behind it, have a family that's been impacted, have just someone's personal story along with expert background and information, then they're going to eat that up.
And there's the golden ticket. To get media to amplify our message for us, we just have to do a little work on the front end and understand their wants and needs. A lot of times when we're doing the messaging, we think about the public's wants and needs. And to me, in addition to that, you got to think about what the media wants and need. It's not enough to say you can come and talk to my poison center director who can give you really life-saving information that's important. And that should be enough, but it's not. That's not what the media wants. They need that emotional connection that we talked about. So it is about families. It is about victims. It is about showing the danger to people, whether it's in demonstrations or in other ways. So I want to talk about a case study that that we did here last year, and it revolved around International Overdose Awareness Day. And if memory strikes, I believe that was August 31st. And typically the way we would handle that is we do some social media posts, maybe send out a press release, and maybe blanket on that day 2 or 3 messages out on our social accounts and hope that maybe somebody picks something up. That to me wasn't a good plan. We weren't going to reach enough people. So I thought, how can we do that? And I thought, you know what? Somebody once told me that the best way to do things to be impactful is bring friends. So I went to a couple of nonprofits in town and said, I got an idea. Let's all come together and go down and meet with one of the local television stations, and let's bring them a plan. And we'll go through those things I talked about. It's not just enough to say it's International Overdose Awareness Day. 108,000 Americans died last year from opioid overdoses, which should be enough. That's not going to get their attention. What we want to do is come in and say, we have a list of all these stories. Here's all the people you can interview. Here are the fun things that we can put on your television screen. The bottom line, we've got content. We've got great content. Now, look, they're journalists. So at the end of the day, they're going to pick or choose. So look, I put some stories on there that I knew they wouldn't pick, just so that the ones I really wanted, I thought that they would lap up. And they loved it so much, they actually produced a commercial for us.
This is what Russian roulette looks like in 2022. The era of one pill can kill. News 4 Jax, keeping parents one step ahead of drug dealers. It's not heroin or cocaine. They're pushing deadly pills disguised as popular prescriptions.
If I could keep just one family from ever having to go through this.
The steps local families are taking to protect kids from fatal fakes. Ending Overdose. Wednesday starting at 5 on News 4 Jax.
Now, they came up with the name Ending Overdose. It wasn't the one I suggested to them, but I was fine with it. And the bottom line is they then ran that commercial multiple times over 5 days to drive people into August 31st. Then when August 31st came around, we had all this content for them starting at like 7 o'clock in the morning. So we had prepackaged stories that they did. We created bumpers, which we called the faces of fentanyl, of children mostly. Obviously a 32-year-old is an adult, but he's somebody's child. He was about the oldest that we put on there to really go through so people could see that this isn't just a marginalized part of our market, that this is going on. We brought survivors. We also brought mothers who'd lost their children to this. Now, there were facts and figures. We got around to that to get it in there because they do need that content also. It's just not the #1 selling point when we went to them. And then we also did some really cool demonstrations. And this is one on locking up your medicine.
So is there something then that we can do to safeguard our prescription drugs in those kinds of situations to prevent that from happening?
Absolutely. I have 2 examples here. So one is a medication lock box that you can store your medications in, and it has a key. The other option, which is a little easier to use when you happen to be traveling or things like that, is a bag. Same thing, same premise. It has a key that you can lock it up and store your medications safely.
We also did a demonstration on how to safely dispose of your medication. In that case, we used the product called the Terra that is a little bag you throw the pills in, add some water, shake it up, deactivates the medicine, the whole thing's biodegradable, and throws it away. The bottom line was, instead of just sending out a press release and saying, hey, we're here if you guys want to come do stories, we went to them with all the content. We said, we'll get the people to the places that you need them to come do the interviews. You want to shoot them all the same day? We'll bring everybody together. The bottom line, because they're so strapped for people because of all the layoffs, consolidations, and so forth, because they're strapped for time, because they produce so much content, the bottom line was make it easy for them. So we did a lot of the legwork that was traditionally done by the media because we understood what it was the media wanted. You know what? We didn't let it in there. So the TV station liked it so much, they put it out in their digital newsletter. In addition to what they did on TV, they put it on their website. They put it on their social channels. So how did that all turn out? Well, just from this one television station, 121,000 unique households. That's not people. You'd probably multiply that number by 3 to get to the number of people we reached that day. Then you add their page views. Then you add their social post page views. Oh, we did a phone bank for them in their evening news so people could call, which created engagement. This is on top of what all the nonprofits that I was working with, we were also putting out on our social channels.
You hear about overdoses, think about people that are, drug addicts, they're living on the street or they're homeless, they're doing different things, and I know it can really just happen to anyone. These pills that you think may be harmless, you can't take a chance. I mean, this one pill can kill thing, it really is, it's real, and it can happen to anyone.
And we got it going so well, we went to the mayor and said, you're going to want to put a blog out on this. And we helped them write a blog by providing the information that they would need for the mayor to put it in his voice to get it out there that these fake pressed pills that can contain fentanyl are killing people in our market. And we talked to a local radio podcaster and got on her podcast, and we provided the experts for that. And again, we sent all the information. We did even some of the write-ups for the intros and stuff to make it easy. So what we were able to do was go across TV, social, digital, radio, because the podcast was also a radio show that went out there, the mayor. And when you got it out through all those people, for the first time, we felt we actually cut through with this message of fake pressed pills that we think people here really need to know about. Now let's talk a little bit about discipline. I'll bring my friend Erin back on.
Start with a calendar. Like, you can start by being like, okay, what are the big events year round, whether it be, certain days that highlight this or that, just anything in the community, anything nationally that recognize, and start plotting those within a calendar. So you start there. That's the easiest way to start a content calendar, because then you have some sort of base. And you can start thinking about content that relates to each of those items. And what you'll have is you'll find that in between all of those marked dates or holidays or whatever it is that marks a significant event, you can make probably a whole month's worth of content.
Yeah, so her point, International Overdose Awareness Day shouldn't be a day for us. It should have been a whole month of August leading up to that day. You have to plan the content to know where it is so you can start doing it. And instead of doing, 2 Facebook posts a week, this is more of what a content calendar would look like. And I even consider this bare bones. But at least for our poison centers in this area, this was one that kind of like people's eyes got really big when they looked at it and said, how are we going to do all that? Well, if you have that plan, it's easy to be able to sit down and do that. So, how do you fill a calendar with that? Well, we have great content. It kind of falls in 3 buckets. Bucket 1 is news. News is those stories that are happening, that day. Today, looking just at our poison center, I've posted on Red Tide, which we have breaking out in Southwest Florida, which is impacting people. It's methamphetamine awareness day. I did some posts on that. There was some news that came out today on a new study about brown recluse spider bites that I put out. And there's some scary information about OD in kids, overdosing in kids on the rise with opioids that people are leaving unattended. And I even found a new study out of University of Washington that looked at high dose THC. That's all news. That's just the news stuff that we came up with today. Then there's information. This is more of like the ongoing safety tips we do, like lock up your medicines, lift your cleaners up, get them out from under the sink so children can't get to them. And then the last bucket, and I think this one is underutilized. It's the most important, call it the POB, which is proof of brand. This is telling stories in first person from the people that we're helping, because that's the most powerful way to get our message out. If we want people to call us, we need people who called us to tell what a great service we provided. You hear from an emotional mom or dad telling about how we saved their child, that cuts through to another parent. So urgency, that's the news stuff that I was talking about. And when you're doing that, you really got to sell the new, the now, or what is next. It's got to be, why does this impact my life right now? Because if it sounds like something I could wait till Saturday to go around and do, then I'm going to wait till Saturday and your message is lost. Now, if the message you're putting out doesn't have an urgency to it, maybe some of our regular prevention stuff, then you got to move down this other tree. I call it the impact tree. You better figure out how you're really going to sell that it's useful to me and my family to be able to do it. And you've got to find that emotional hook to grab into me to make me want to take that useful information. And then lastly, and most importantly, it has to be memorable. Because again, if I see it, I'm going to see probably 10 more messages in the next 30 seconds. And if I don't remember that message, then it was actually of no use to me. Gary Brown is owner of a company called Talent Dynamics that works with talent placement. He was a VP of news, and he was also a creative services manager at one point in his career, along with being a news director.
And don't make me feel like you're selling me. Make me feel like you're connecting with me and telling a story. That's the thing people forget. With what you're doing, you're really telling a story. More so than selling a product or service.
Yeah, if you think about it, from when we're just little children, one of the first things that we're taught are about stories. People read stories to us as kids. And, you know, we don't want to come off like we're competing with the car dealership in selling stuff. But we are selling. We're selling safety. We're selling information about how to make people's lives better. But if we do it by telling a story, that's what really cuts through, because that's when we can reach in and hook their heart. Now, I have an acronym that I used to teach on how you hook people in the heart. We call it evacs. And the easy way to remember the acronym is, if it doesn't have these 5 elements, evacuate whatever content that was immediately and try to come at it a new way. So the E stands for emotional connection. So that's really sitting down and saying, what is it about this connects? And it's not just important enough to say, well, it's safety information. Well, if that were true, then everybody would wear their seatbelts. But not everybody wear their seatbelts. If that were true, people wouldn't smoke cigarettes, but we still have people that smoke cigarettes. It's not just enough to say safety. You've really got to dig in deeper in that to prove to me that there's a safety to help my family. V is the visuals, whether it's video, pictures. They've got to be strong pictures that are going to grab people. And I'm going to show you an example of that coming up in just a minute. You know, A is for audio, oral. If I want to sound more impressive, I use big words like that. But it's really the content, the messaging. What are the sounds that are going to make people remember it? Think about commercials or jingles that you hear, and sometimes it's the sound in a jingle that will make you remember a product. Context, to me, that's another big word. And to me, it's just simply means, why does this matter to me right now? Why should I stop what I'm doing in my busy life and deal with this important information that you're giving? And lastly is shareable. You know, I used the word memorable a moment ago, but I think shareable is actually a better word. We need to create the kind of content that's not just so impactful that people are going to take action on it. We want to create content that's so impactful that they will take action and then want to tell their friends about it, because they want to come off good to people. There's no better marketing than if we can get it going neighbor to neighbor, Facebook friend to Facebook friend, because people really trust the people that are their friends. My buddy Greg Durkowski worked on a project like this one time with a doctor's office in Texas.
We need to do a series of little stories and demonstrative videos on how to stretch properly, because you're going to have all these rookies going out to the race for the cure on that, Saturday morning in April, and they're going to hurt themselves. Well, that's what our business is to keep people from hurting themselves. So we did all these really quick little demonstrative videos. I mean, they were like 60 seconds, and we had it all texted out. Here's how you stretch your hamstring. Here's how you do your hip flexors. I'm not making this up. We were the lead story on the newspaper's website, which back then was like bigger than every other media outlet combined. We were the lead story. That's insane. But it speaks to having a specialty and knowing specifically who you're talking to. And when we pitched it to the newspaper, people were like, look, a lot of your readers are going to be going out there. We want to help them not get injured. And they're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We'll run that.
So on their content calendar, they had that the Race for the Cure was coming up, which was a major event in town. And they sat down and said, how can we create content going with somebody else's event? And being a doctor's office, they figured out this stretching for the people that were going to go out and run, and it connected with people and it got their brand out. Target marketing. So now that you've got the ideas of how to create the content, you've got the ideas of how to fill that pipeline year round, how do you make sure you get it in front of the right people? Well, for healthcare messaging, it's pretty easy. You can do any bit of research, and 79% of moms, so 8 out of 10, are the ones that select the child's doctors. 9.5 out of 10 make their own selection. 59% or almost 60% make decisions for others. So if you want to get healthcare marketing out there, it's pretty simple. We need to target women. Really starting at about age 18, you could raise it to 24, and then through 74, 75 years old that you want to go talk. Here's my buddy Jacques again.
The people that care the most about safety, and we see this all the time in media research, it's women, right? When there is any kind of safety issue, whether it's weather related, whether it's poison related, whether it's food related, right? The people that share the information about safety are women, significantly more than men.
So I think Jacques just said all us guys out there are kind of stupid. That's what I took from that. But I think from a marketing perspective, it is much simpler that you need to go out and put the information in front of the people that are going to use it. So you want to create for a female audience. And you got to be careful that you can't pander to this female audience, because women are very smart consumers of content. So it needs to be very sophisticated that we're going to get in there, messaging that, again, hooks the heart in an emotional way before we get into selling the features. I always say there's 5 attributes: family, safety and security, health, home, money, and finances. If I can figure out in the piece of content I'm creating how to wrap 3 of those in there, it will usually hook the heart with the person that we are trying to reach. And you got to use the tools that are available to you today in targeting, because you can target age, you can target gender, you can target lifestyles, you can target geography. So let's look at another case study. So the first case study I showed you was how to do marketing with no dollars involved. This one used a few dollars, less than about 5,000 total was put into this. But our center here in North Florida, we also are the poison control centers for the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, St. John's, and St. Croix. And we have a huge problem over there. About 75% of our calls in Florida come from the home. 25% come from healthcare facilities. In the Virgin Islands, it's the opposite. We get very few calls from the home. We only get them from emergency departments when people come in. So we wanted to sit down and figure out how could we change that. And so our goal was to really make sure that everybody knows our phone number. And as I was thinking about that they know the number, I want to go further than that. I don't want them just to know the number. I want them to have that number in their telephone. So I wanted to create a plan where there was a way they could download the V card straight into their contacts on their mobile phone. And to do this, I wanted to geo-target, and I cut this down to women 25 to 54. I wanted a very small target audience that I really wanted to go into blast so that I could hit that frequency. And then I wanted to geo-fence it to that group who had children that were within a mile of a pediatrician's office, a school, places where moms would go. Now, it turned out the Virgin Islands weren't big enough. I eventually had to stretch it out to be where it contained the advertising just to those 3 islands. So the way we did it was I wanted the ads to go to people's phones. TV is not very well used in the Virgin Islands. Newspapers are not that well read. So I really wanted to go. And the one thing in my trip over there, I saw everybody had a mobile phone. So I said, how do we get in front of their eyeballs on the mobile phone? So again, we used the geofencing and geo-targeting to be able to send the advertising to the phone. And then we tested it on Facebook using an A/B test. And we put this image up that we thought was really important, showing a doctor so that it would have a lot of credibility to our message. And we really thought this was the image that was going to win. And I shouldn't have thought that way because it goes against what I'm teaching. We put this image of a mom and a baby up. This was the ad that people clicked on. It's a big picture right there that shows a concerned mother with a child. This is what grabbed people. We saw it in the early returns of the Facebook A/B testing, and we pivoted to more marketing that was along this emotional lines. What the marketing did when you clicked on it, it was two things. One, it took you to our website where we gave you two different areas where you could click and immediately on your phone save the poison information number. And that's what it looked like, the card that popped up on your phone. The other thing it did once we had you is now we could retarget you wherever you went. So anytime you opened your browser, we became the advertisement that people saw. Have you ever been on one of the search engines and, you know, searched for something new? Like my daughter just had a wedding, so I had been searching wedding things. Every website I went to all of a sudden had wedding ads. This is what's called retargeting. So we could send the ads back to people so that we could continue to put that frequency of our number in front of them on a regular basis. Then to add to it, I bought a little bit of radio because it was cheap and I wanted something else, putting just not just what they were seeing, I wanted something in their ear also. So I just bought 5 spots a day on 5 radio stations for nearly 3 months. And it was just to add so that there was one more voice telling people this was important information. You know, the results, we got almost 1,500 clicks throughs. Those are people that actually came through to download the card. More than 281,000 impressions. And understand this, there's only between 79 and 100,000 people on the Virgin Islands. And that's a click-through rate of 0.53. A click-through rate that's considered good by HRSA here in the United States is 0.1. So we were 5 times that, or as I like to say, we were 500% better. Looking at the display ads, not as many click-throughs, 45 on those. We picked up another 26,000 impressions, and the click-through rate is still double what is considered a good number. If you're curious about how to use this type of advertising, there's a company in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I am not associated with them, called In-House Advertising. And I worked with them because I really wanted to kind of be on that new technology because I needed to disrupt the way we advertise. We had been buying TV down there before I got here for years, and our call volume was not changing one bit. We had to do something different. We could no longer be taxis. We have to do something to get people through all the messaging that's coming at them to stop and pay attention. Here's my friend Jacques again.
If your thumb scrolls by it, that counts as a view. That doesn't mean that you were sticky enough, that you were what I call glanceable enough, right? That doesn't mean your glanceability was so strong that I'm going to stop and then start to open it up or like it or share it or comment about it. Ultimately, the greatest form of love on any of these platforms is the sharing, right? Because if they start to become a marketer for you, you can't pay for that.
We need to become the Uber of content creators. We have to create content that's going to make people stop, that's going to make them listen, that's going to make them pay attention, that's going to make them tell their friends about our message. You know, so our goals today, hopefully I have painted a picture of what's going on in the media landscape and the opportunities that it creates for us. I think I've stressed enough that we are now content creators. We're journalists, just like the ones at the CBC, and we need to think about it in those type of terms. The importance of a content calendar, of understanding what's coming up so that you can work ahead so that you are creating enough content to keep the funnel full. Talked about the importance of being big, of being bold, and amplifying that message. We have to shout above all the marketing that's being done out there. Talked about the importance of emotional connection, about getting people to stop, to feel it in their hearts, because that's where consumers really make most of their important decisions. We don't want to be just another commodity sitting in a crowded marketplace. And lastly, we talked about target marketing and taking that message and putting it in front of the people who will actually do something with it. Because when the message goes to people that aren't going to do something with it, then it's just another one of those 10,000 messages that is out there in the day. That's my presentation. I really appreciate your guys' time. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. Laurie, I guess I will toss it back to you.
Thank you. I'm having a little bit of technical issues right now with seeing the chat box. So I'm going to get Richard to forward any questions. And if you would like to ask your question, please put your hand up. Otherwise, in the chat button, and Richard will read the questions for me. Thank you.
One thing in the chat box, I did put up a survey. It's 5 questions. If anybody could take a moment, just having surveys done that show that we did presentation, that helps us with our funding down here because we are funded by the government. If you need help with the survey, I think good answers are excellent. Yes, 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 yes. And under the comments you can put, I laughed, I cried. It was better than cats.
Fantastic. Do we have any questions for Mike? Outstanding presentation. I think I got more out of it even the second time. So somebody said here not able to see the survey. Any chance it could be posted again? I'll post that again.
Okay.
Don't be shy, everyone. Oh, Laurie, you're muted.
I find it's often, kind of hard to get patients to come and give their story. I'm wondering if you have any recommendations for that.
Yeah, I think one of the ways is you have to make an emotional sell to them. And you have to start with. So you had the sound and the story that popped up in the commercial earlier where the guy said, if I can keep one family from having to go through this, and I think you have to approach people in that same way. And one of the things that, because I used to teach a lot of young reporters, and a lot of them would come in and say, I don't want to go ask somebody if they want to talk to us because it feels intrusive. And what's interesting is not all people are the same. Some people, when something bad happens to them, they actually find it cathartic to talk or cathartic to share the information. So it is really sitting down and I never try to put a hard sell on anybody, but I like to say, you know what, you could really help a lot of people if you would share your story so that another mother, another father doesn't go through this. And that's usually where we find the best results at getting people. And again, if you shoot 500, that's you're doing a great job. And that works out well. And people that don't want to talk, that's fine. We'll figure out a different way to tell that, tell that story. And that's what, to me, you've always got to be sitting down and figuring out how to go back out and convince people a second time to come back if they don't like the way you did it the first time.
Excellent. I see a comment here. Somebody's made great presentation. Will the recording be posted somewhere online? And yes, absolutely, it will be posted on the Parachute website. I am not seeing hands. Michael, with Parachute, I just want to confirm. I want to make sure it's not a user error here on the system. Can you just confirm that you're also not seeing hands?
That's correct. Yeah, there currently nobody has their hand up.
Okay. I guess I'm going to take the opportunity then. Mike, you made a huge transition. You came from your media background. You brought that to the Poison Center, and you spent a lot of time sort of educating your team as to how you go about doing all of this. You've spoken about things that can be done with little to no money, but have you been sort of, how are you engaging with your leadership about funding requirements and support to advance this work? Are they seeing a higher value now with the returns that you're able to bring in, or where do you see this going for Florida Poison Center?
Well, I think they see the value. I think the trouble for us is with government funding, we're very limited, and right now we've run into a huge problem in this country finding spies. Especially emergency room nurses used to be one of the main places that we went to find people, and this travel nursing phenomenon that has popped up here in the United States, where you can leave Jacksonville and go work in another city for 3 days, and they'll pay you more than what a hospital here in town would pay you to work in 2 weeks. People are jumping and doing that. We've seen since COVID, a lot of people get out of healthcare, and we're just not attractive right now. So unfortunately, every new dollar that we can get coming in right now, we're all about trying to raise salaries so that we can retain the spies we have and be able to go out and get new spies. The funding would be great. But honestly, what I've looked at, what's been done when I went back in time and looked through it, I think a lot of times the money wasn't used for maximum benefit. And so what I want to do right now is try to maximize the free benefit that I can get out there by making us a bigger part of the news cycle on a a regular basis. So I'm having a meeting on Friday that we're going to sit down and talk about the holidays that are coming up in December. And we're going to talk about, there's a big tradition of office Christmas parties this time of year, and there's a real potential for alcohol poisoning. And I realize it's technically not a poisoning, but we do deal with that. You have children that can get into alcohol. We run into the problems of button batteries with all the decorations that are coming down. We see an explosion this time of year. So I'm going to sit down and I need to talk to the experts here. And I say, I need you guys give me the data. And then what I'm going to do is figure out, how do I get these stories out to people? I also just saw, and I've got to do a little bit more data research, that there's been a pop in the number of children that are overdosing because of opioids in the household that are unsecured. And I'm like, I can sell children overdosing. That's an easy sell for me to be able to go take to media. We'll do the food safety stuff again, as again, you get to, home parties this time of year and everybody throws all the food out on the table and it sits there for 3 or 4 hours, which obviously food poisoning risk. So I just got to sit down and figure out, how do we do that? And how do we do it in a way that doesn't sound like, oh, we're the important experts and you have to listen to us, and really, connect through to people. So.
And Mike, I guess I'll steal another one. You've built an incredible network leveraging your media connections, but also with partner organizations. Could you speak a little bit about how you built those partnerships with the not-for-profits and bringing whole storylines to media, about that experience?
Yeah, the building partnerships was really about getting out into the community, and especially coming off of COVID, where nobody had been out for a couple of years, and some people were still reluctant. It was getting out and seeing people face to face. And then for me, learning about what each of these nonprofits did. And while we don't necessarily do everything they do, and they don't necessarily do everything we do, I wanted to find the networks where I could create nexuses. So this is all my folks on illegal illicit substances, because we're facing a huge problem with that, with fake press pills here. We have a huge bath salt problem. And so when I got all of those and I said, each of us can kind of be out there individually shouting. I said, but think about it like a big marching band. You're one trumpet. If all of a sudden all of us get unified in the same message, now we're a marching band of a couple hundred people. And if you're sitting in a stadium, 200 instruments playing at the same time are a lot easier to hear than one single instrument. So I keep trying to find those nexuses. So we've got a real good network of children's safety groups here in this area that I've been able to connect with. Definitely big in the drug community. There's some adult safety stuff that we've stepped down with all the local health departments, but it's figuring out how to do the nonprofits, also the government though, because we have a lot of different governmental agencies, and then it was the hospitals, and that was kind of unheard of because we're based at one of the hospitals. And the hospitals, I was naive. I was thinking all of you want the same thing. No, they don't. They all want patients, preferably ones with insurance. And so they are still somewhat competitive. So actually it was going in and telling people, no, we want to create this prevention so that we can save lives, because that's really what it's all about.
Excellent. And I'm just seeing there's a question here in the chat box, so I'll read it out. Our poison center has just rebranded in Canada, and we will soon have a national poison center number. In the past, we used phone stickers to get our number out there. With change in technology, phone stickers are outdated. What type of tool do you see as most effective with a limited budget to share our number and create awareness for poison centers?
Stickers and magnets, I think still do have some value at this point, but anytime I hand anything out with the sticker or the number on it, I immediately ask people, put it in your phone. And that's, the number one thing. I think creating the downloadable V cards where it can be downloaded off your website. I think it's really important that anytime you're in any social media, that number is constantly out there. And I make sure that our folks that talk to the media, which includes me, that I'm like, I don't care if they don't give you the opportunity. You figure out somewhere in there. And we talk about pivoting questions so that you can always make sure that the phone number gets in there when you're doing media. I spend a lot of time calling the media on a regular basis to try to get them, even if they're doing a story and they don't include us, to include our number. So if there's, we had some sort of weed that popped up recently that we called it Clay County edamame, which was kind of our tongue-in-cheek name for it, but I forget what the plant is called, but it has like little seed pods like edamame. And for some reason, people were eating this stuff that was growing wild on the side of the highway. I'm like, what would make you think to do that? And this stuff is very dangerous. It was making people sick. But so we had to get it out there, and I was to all the TV stations, even if you don't want to include us, tell that story and then make sure you get our number, because people need to call us right away, because this is one of those that we need to treat quickly and not wait, to day 3 or 4 before we're out there. We're rebranding in the States, by the way, because they just rebranded our national organizations. The AAPCC is now the APC, but don't tell them I said that, because they'll get mad that because I'm supposed to call it America's Poison Control. So we're going through the same thing, and that's a time-consuming rebranding process, because every brochure we have needs to be changed. The logos need to be changed. I mean, it is, it's a hassle. But when I look at our number one feature is our phone number. Obviously the benefit is the safety that we provide, but that's the number one feature. So to me, you've really just got to pound it out. Every public event I do, I try to get people right in front of me to put it in their phones. When I speak to large groups, I say the number like 9 times in the presentation. I bring it up. It's like my 4th slide usually. And then I'll be going, and about slide 18, I bring it up. It's slide 36, I bring it up. I mean, I just keep pounding. And by the end of it, people laugh. And I'm like, okay, now I know I'm kind of getting through, because it's that frequency in the presentation, and I'll pop it up, like the last time I pop it up and say, I'm sorry, I may have forgotten to mention this, but you should put this in your phone. And it usually gets a big laugh out of folks at that point. And on the surveys, a lot of times what I get in the comments is, I put the number in my phone, and I'm like, then my job was done here today. Because the reality that I'm going to teach somebody to totally poison-proof their house in a 45-minute presentation is unlikely.
Mike McCormick, 222.
So much.
Good one, Laurie. Go ahead.
We're fighting to get the 3-digit number here in the States. That's because everybody knows 911 here in the States. That's the emergency number. And now they have a suicide number, which is 988. 511 gives you traffic information. We need one of those 3-digit numbers, because remembering this long 10-digit phone number is it's just crazy. And who remembers phone numbers anymore? I mean, I remember when I was a kid, you remembered everybody's phone numbers because you had to actually dial it on that thing on the wall. But today you ask Siri to dial somebody and she does it for you. So
yeah, it's so true. I think we're in the same generation. Thanks so much, Mike. This is a very interesting and very useful presentation. Just a reminder that the recording will be available, and also as you exit the webinar, a short evaluation will appear. Please fill out the evaluation, because that helps us with future education sessions, and any comments that you have would be important. And thanks to all who attended.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike.
Hey, thanks, Richard. Thanks, Laurie.
Thanks. Have a great
Have a
day.
wonderful day, everyone.